Thank you so much for inviting me. I mean, this is the second Wealth Summit, and it's kind of cool when you're looking at wealth. We also got to talk about health, except we also got to talk about what's going on. Okay, particularly when we talk about the shooting in Vegas, and this is it's got to be said. There's a lot of questions like, are we blowing it out of perspective? Or what happened? Because I'm getting patients in Orange County that are going, oh my God, the devastation, it's incredible. You know, and did you know anyone there? No. Were you even aware of the concert? No. But any trauma like that, it awakens in us stuff that's happened to us. You know, loss of a loved one, loss of trauma, drama, I mean, all this stuff. And then you have empathy for other people. So it's really, really important that we honor, and these are the questions that aren't going to be answered for a long time. And it's going to be in question for a long time. Like, why was it done? Who was involved? You know, who was harmed? And how do we prevent this stuff in the future? I mean, the number one thing, we got to keep the victims in our prayers. And it's not just the people that were at the concert, or it's everybody that hears this. We're all victims. And that's why it's like, what do you fear? And so when you're looking at this, people are walking along saying, oh my God, you know, the terrorists are everywhere. No, there's not people that wake up and say, look, I just want to scare people. You know, there's no such thing as a terrorist. These guys have political motivations, political agendas. We're labeling them as terrorists. So they have a purpose, even though it's sick and not effective. Well, it's effective in scaring people. But what do we fear? You know, economic collapse, war, government control, big pharma, forced vaccinations. Then some of these are fears, but a lot of them are real. I mean, this is really going on. Are you afraid of the end of our species? Are you afraid of stroke, cancer? You know, how does this happen? Well, when we look at this, what does the Bible say? The more you worry about stuff, the better it turns out? Oh, no, it doesn't say that, does it? So when we talk about false expectations appearing real, the fear, not only does it not add to your life, but it negatively affects your health. And I mean, particularly when you look at just the medical definition, it's literally any adverse stimulus, physical, mental, emotional, that can have an internal and external disturbs the organism's homeostasis. And that's kind of the balance of the body. Well, what's neat about this Wealth Summit is we really can't control the events outside. You can't control what's going to happen to you. The only thing that's absolutely in your control is your response. Your response to that environment. You can't control the economy, you can't control the world, can't control anything. But if you control your response, you radically affect the outcome. Radically. I mean, if you've had the loss of a loved one, run over by a car, you know, I mean, any kind of trauma, what's your response to that life change? Because you can't really say good or bad. Now this, William James, brilliant philosopher, brilliant physician. The world we see that seems so insane is a result of a belief system that's not working. To perceive the world differently, we must be willing to change our belief system, let the past slip away, expand our sense of now, and dissolve the fear in our minds. Now, he wrote that in the mid-1800s. When huge war going on, north, south. Nobody knew if the country was going to make it. But is this pertinent today? Absolutely it is. And so that fear, that psychosis, that damage, the trauma, it's everywhere. And I get patients, you know, doc, I know I'm feeling better. What test do I take to make sure that I'm better? You want to know how I answer that? It's like, assume that the worst test that you're going to get is going to be horrible. Now make the lifestyle changes immediately. Change your physical, chemical, emotional stress, regenerate healthy tissue, sleep good, hug your loved ones, you'll be fine. You don't do a test unless it's going to change your therapy. So when we, you know, high blood pressure, cholesterol, I mean, all these fears, this is a belief system. It's not reality. And so when we get trauma like this, and I'm not just talking about Vegas, but I mean any type of event, because there's going to be another event like this next year, another event. There's always something going on. We got to have certain self-empathy. And because when you hear about someone getting hurt, it awakens inside of us damage that we've had in the past, loss, trauma, any of that stuff. So give yourself some self-empathy, some self-compassion. Now, when we look at this, self-kindness, how many people are kind to themselves? I was at this seminar about 10 years ago in Santa Barbara. Now, Santa Barbara, you're talking upper income. Okay, I was sitting in the back of the room. Okay, so this guy, Marshall Rosenberg, goes in and says, okay, write down a mistake that you made. Then write down how you educated yourself on that. And you know what this group of very, very wealthy, educated people would say to themselves? Stupid, you do it every time. And this is how they're talking to themselves. And because we're not trained to love ourselves and give ourselves self-kindness, common humanity, perceiving one's experiences as part of the larger human experience rather than seeing them separate and isolating. If we did this, could we harm others? If we really had that self-compassion? I mean, mindfulness, thinking about what we're actually doing. If we actually incorporated this into our world, would that make us more harmonious? Would it be add to life? So what I want you to do, I want to start putting this into perspective. And this could be anything. And this was, one of our patients was actually, that's a different story. It was a helicopter pilot. In the war, his helicopter crashed, and his best friend, who just had a child, died. And so the kid would have to grow up fatherless. And so when you look at this, and yeah, I did the graphics. You could tell it's really pretty horrible. But imagine, okay, you had a top, black on one side, totally bad, horrible, negative, no redeeming values. The other side, totally good, everything beautiful, pure, wonderful, spectacular. Is anything like that? Yeah, don't bring up God, okay, but everything else, okay, is anything like that? Not really. Because this tragedy, this helicopter, is the kid going to grow up with more independence? When you hear that story, you're going to hug your loved ones a little bit more. So when that top starts to spin, you start to see both aspects of this. And this could be anything in your life. And when we're talking about health, wealth, loss of anything, there's never a one-sided view. And this is giving you perspective. So try and get that top to spin, because this is life mastery. When you can see both sides of every situation, you realize that there isn't totally one horrible and one good. They change your life in appropriate directions, and it's amazing. So this is what we need to survive in this planet, just to survive. You got to have a balanced view of the world, okay? Not worse, not better. How many random acts of good were done on that day of the shooting? How many millions of people are here? How many doors were open? How many people were helped upstairs or downstairs? Psychotic event where hundreds of people are harmed. So let's do it. Like when a patient comes in and goes, man, this is killing me. I said, I don't understand that. I don't hear it, because it's not killing you. If you say this pain is absolutely life-changing, that I can't play with my kids and I'm scared, I totally identify with that. But if you start blowing it up out of proportion, you're not going to get better. Okay, so when somebody, prepare in advance. Should you have money set aside, food set aside for any kind of trauma? Yeah, that's just smart. Take charge of your own mental status. When you look at the nutrients and brain function, omega-3s, okay, that's vital. But also, can you reprogram your brain? There is, and we're going to cover that later. But you actually have the control of your mind to reprogram the subconscious through repetition. It's amazing. And then take charge of your own health. Are you a victim of genes? I'm going to show you how to take charge of your health today and then make decisions based on long term. I mean, that just makes sense. How is this going to affect your life 10 years from now, or your kids or your grandkids? So now I can start the talk. Okay, now the McFies, they said, yeah, talk about health. And I said, well, okay, that's kind of vague. Okay, and so if we come up with the diseases that kill 80% of us, and I show you how to avoid it and reverse those disease process, would that be of value? Okay, cool. So I'm going to show you the most common diseases. We're going to know the cause, solutions, how to prevent it, and learn what you can do for optimal health. That's what I'm going to tell you. Here's the bummer. Okay, these are not diseases. I'm going to tell you the end right now. They're adaptive physiologic responses. Because when we talk about cardiovascular disease, what shape is it? What does it look like? If I talk about Parkinson's disease, you know the posture and the movements. But what shape is that? What color is it? And the reason I'm presenting it this way is because you're thinking in your belief system that these are actually diseases that are attacking the body, but they're not. They're an adaptive physiologic response. And these are what are called non-communicable diseases. They kill 80% of our population, and it's also going to be wiping out the economy in about 4 or 5 years. Okay, some people say 6 years at the outside. So this is tremendous. And you can see on here, high blood pressure. What kind of species on the planet can't regulate their own physiology? You know, what was your cat's blood pressure this morning? You didn't check? Oh my gosh. You know, do you understand? It just doesn't make sense. So non-communicable diseases, if you look at the World Health Organization, they say it's literally going to wipe out the economies. But these are diseases you can't catch. You got to actually earn. And it's killing 80% of the population. They're not infectious. Infectious diseases used to be a big burden. Now, this is telling. See, if you look at what was killing us 100 years ago and what's killing us now, it's radically different. You know, 100 years ago, we didn't have road systems, we didn't have fresh food, we didn't have good sewer systems, no water. So infectious disease, or age of pestilence and famine, was about 100 years ago. Now, what's killing us? Age of degenerative and man-made diseases. Man-made diseases. So we're creating this. How are we creating this? I mean, it just seems strange. You know, when you're talking, and now infectious diseases are skyrocketing. What we used to have in the past. So why are infectious diseases skyrocketing? Could it be that we're weakening the immune system? Yes or yes? Yeah, good. That's going to be easy. So here's the World Health Organization, non-communicable diseases, kills 80% of our population. Cardiovascular, cancer, chronic respiratory, diabetes, and mental disorders. So what are causing these? Now, when we look at this is these non-communicable diseases, because this is a wealth summit, the cost or the burden, the economic burden of this will start to wipe out economies. Okay, now they're talking about non-communicable diseases. They kind of know that they say the prevalence of risk factors: tobacco use, unhealthy diet, physical inactivity, harmful use of alcohol. And they're saying that people are submitting to this because of transnational corporations. Okay, that you're buying and eating corporate food and this is making you sick. That's not really true. If you're eating toxic, unhealthy food, is your blood healthy or sick? Sick. So your body's going to go through an adaptive physiologic response based on that toxic environment. Now, in psycho world, which is where we are, they're going to look at those adaptive responses and say, wow, you have high cholesterol. You have high blood pressure. You need to take this diuretic beta blocker ACE inhibitor to lower it. No, it's not going to make you healthy. In fact, you're going to die early, but you're going to have great blood pressure. Honestly, I'm not making this up. 50 years from now, people are going, no, wait, nobody was that stupid. Yes. Okay, so $47 trillion by 2030. Okay, $47 trillion by 2030. These diseases are going to cost us, Okay, and that's if we keep going along with treating the symptoms with toxic chemicals. Currently, now can you see non-communicable diseases up here? Yeah, most of them. Cancer, autoimmune diseases, heart diseases. If I said that 1 in 4 water buffalo in Africa have heart disease, would you say, my God, we've got to get hydrochlorothiazide over there and put it in the water? We've got to lower their blood pressure, for goodness. No, that's silly. Okay, depression, dementia, thyroid, diabetic. This is not a healthy population. When we look at our kids, has anyone ever heard of the autistic tsunami? Okay, they now have autistic kids on Sesame Street. We're trying to normalize this pathology. How many autistic kids are there today? Nobody knows. Nobody knows because they're checking data on 8-year-olds and it starts after the 18-month shots when they're 2. So we know in 1999, 500. 2010, 1 in 68. The Psychology Today says it's 1 in 28. We know by 2025 it'll be 1 in 2. 50% of our offspring will be autistic. Will be autistic. Now, 96% of those can't work. We're also talking when they hit 21, then they're going to be drawing on Social Security. That means they're not going to be paying into it. So this is the economic crash. By 2025, it will cost $1 trillion in the U.S. to take care of these kids. And is that a one-time expense? No. So we've got 300 million Americans in this boat, full speed towards rocks and an iceberg or whatever kind of analogy you want. This is coming. So we have to know what causes it. But there's such a fear factor and a prejudice factor of finding out what causes it. Is it vaccines? Oh, no, it can't be. Let's not even look into that. Vaccines are safe and effective except when they're not. And they prevented diseases. Okay, look, I'm not pro-vaccine. I'm not anti-vaccine. I'm pro-human. If you do a medical procedure on a human being and it has a negative outcome, then that procedure shouldn't be forced. I mean, when we look at the Journal of Toxicology, when people say they're safe and effective vaccines, this is just talking about one of the adjuvants. Because in our culture today, you can't disrespect vaccines. And there's no argument that if you vaccinate a population, you can see a reduction of the incidence of certain diseases. Where are the long-term studies? There aren't. All these findings plausibly implicate aluminum adjuvants in pediatric vaccines has causal factors contributing to the increasing rates of autistic spectrum disorders. Now, there's over 80 different journal articles that state that vaccines are causal. There's over 240 journal articles that say that they're implicated in it. But when you see causal, that's a big deal. Journal of Public Health, autistic disorder change points, years are coincident with the introduction of vaccines manufactured using human fetal cell lines. Now, these are neoplastic cell growth medium. Neoplastic is cancer cells. And you might think, well, since we can't isolate viruses, you know how vaccines are grown? They're grown in living tissue. And if you have an immortal cell line, those are cancer cells, and this is what some of the substrates that flu shots are grown in now. Has anyone ever heard of flu shots? Okay, well, when you get them, okay, if you're forced, like in California, they used to take a living chicken egg, put a hole in the top, put some infected tissue in there, put it on a shelf, let it fester for about 10 days. Then they'd take it off, they'd centrifuge it out, then you put some formaldehyde, some preservatives in there, maybe a little thimerosal for multiple dose vials, and then you'd inject that in the person. Now, I know you're thinking about wild chicken viruses, you're thinking maybe formaldehyde might be toxic. Yeah, you're right, and then long-term studies show that it's not effective in reducing the flu anyway. It even says on the jar, it's never been shown to reduce the flu. But you don't have to worry about that because that's very labor intensive. So since 2013, they've developed monkey kidney tissue, dog kidney tissue, aborted human fetal cells, and caterpillar larvae. Now, 3 of those are immortal cell lines. Now, you might think you're injecting cancer cells in the body. It might be bad. Well, yeah, in the 60s when they developed this manufacturing process, they felt that injecting cancer cells in human beings might cause, what? Cancer? Yeah, that's what they were thinking. So there's post-marketing surveillance. I'm serious. It's, when you read journal articles, you're kidding. People are buying this. Okay, so when we look at this, impact environmental factors on autistic. Again, another article, human fetal cell lines. These are immortal cell lines that are inside the vaccines. Immortal cell lines are not just in flu vaccines, they're in the measles, mumps, and rubella, they're hepatitis A. We're also, because what we're doing on the planet isn't good for our species. They say that we're in the middle of the next mass extinction event. This means that if we're damaging our environment, if we're damaging our home, that we're not going to live well. Okay, so this was a great article, but Earth is experiencing a huge episode of population declines and extirpations, which will have negative cascading consequences on ecosystems, functionings, and services vital to sustaining civilization. Civilization is where we are now. And if what we're doing, so this means that our actions are really important. You have to look at a worldwide aspect. Does that make sense? So it's no longer, hey, as long as we can go up and we can get that meat in a plastic wrapper, we're not going to ask about what the health of the animal was. Do you know what I mean? We have to start being responsible with the planet. And because the planet will be here, we just won't. So now let's look at philosophy, because if we're looking at these diseases that you don't catch, you got to actually earn. The quality of your life literally depends on the quality of questions you ask. In philosophy, it makes sense. This is the original aspect of philosophy. Questioning, critical discussion, rational argument, and systematic presentation. I love that. Is that involved in medical world today? Rational discussion? Yes, your blood pressure is elevated because your blood's just not healthy. You're dehydrated. You got a toxic deficient diet. You're not sleeping well. And we need to check those factors. Is that done in modern? No, not at all. Well, a couple of doctors are doing it. You guys are. You're going to say, look, guys, you don't really have high blood pressure. You have an adaptive physiologic response. So when we look at philosophy, what's your philosophy? And this goes on health. Now, this is my philosophy, and most of it's inarguable. When you look at the body as self-healing and self-regulating, every doctor learns this. Self-healing, self-regulating. Now, there's an innate inborn intelligence in the body. And this is what I'll walk people through. Is the body smart or stupid? Smart. Do you know some people say, I don't know, I'm not a doctor? Okay, so we got to have a little bit of a discussion. Let's take a step back, and I'm going to walk you through this, that your body really, really is smart. You can eat an apple or a banana, and you're going to turn it into blood and eye tissue in just a few hours. That's pretty smart. You're going to break it into the protein, fats, and carbohydrates, or the amino acids, the fatty acids, and the usable sugars, and you're going to literally rebuild your body out of that friggin' apple and banana. Is that smart? Then say, well, I guess so. Good. Now we can have a talk. Disease, and this is traditionally how chiropractors write it, would be a lack of ease, dis-ease. And your guys' use of going over the real words and the root, I love that. Okay? Doesn't really exist. It's an adaptive physiologic response. It's like coughing, sneezing, fever. Are those pathologies, or is that an intelligent adaptive response? When you look at fever, for every 1 degree increase in temperature, the speed of the immune system doubles. Viruses, funguses, and bacteria die at a higher temperature. Is that an intelligent response? Yes or yes? Now, you can take a chemical to alter that physiologic response. Tylenol, Dayquil, NyQuil, whatever quill. And does that make you healthier? No, it suppresses symptoms, and the data points on there show that it's extremely toxic. The deadliest drug in America is Tylenol. but it's gentler and safer on your stomach. Okay? Seriously. Okay. To treat the human adaptive response without addressing the cause results in a poor outcome. 106,000 people a year, every year, are killed for the right drug at the right time in the right dosage. That's all done correctly. I'm not talking malpractice. You know, the aspirin a day for a healthy heart. Have you heard that? Okay, cute little pink bottle. It even says baby aspirin on it. Then if you turn the bottle around, it says, for God's sake, don't give this to a baby. It's poisonous. It'll kill the child. Did you see the back? Okay, well, it is true. Definitive study came out on that if you take an aspirin a day, 100,000 people take an aspirin a day, 33 lives will be saved from cardiovascular events. 74 will die of stroke, and 130 will die from gastrointestinal bleeding. So if you're good at math, you lose a couple hundred, but you save 33. Really? This is our world, and this is advertised. Now, was the study done to show vitamin C or an extra glass of water, all of which we know helps blood? No, it was just done on chemicals. So there are laws of physiology that human must abide to achieve optimal health. Absolute laws, like the law of gravity. Do you need to sleep correctly? Absolutely. Do you need to have appropriate nutrients and appropriate movement and appropriate thoughts? Absolutely. You do that, and the dis-ease or lack of ease won't exist. Here's the challenge. This is basic philosophy of modern medicine. Body is self-healing and self-regulating. Absolutely. Except your cholesterol is high, so you need the statin. Oh, your blood pressure, your body is self-healing and self-regulating, but you're pre-diabetic. Okay, yeah, right. I'm pre-dead. Okay? You don't have cancer yet, but it's there. It's there. I'm sure it is. Okay, and the body is always trying to attain homeostasis. So this means that we have a little book, and if your physiology is different than what my book says, then I'm going to give you a chemical to alter your physiology, and then we'll get a better response. You're not going to live longer, but you're going to look way better on the chart. Yes, I know you're sick, can't sleep, and nothing works correctly. You can't have appropriate relations, but your blood test looks great. Your cholesterol is all normal. Now, the germ theory, and I have a couple of discussions with several doctors. Oh, the germ theory is it. It's there. Man, germs cause disease. Really? Really? Is that in question today? So let's look at this. First, let's look at homeostasis. Now, this is a theory that the body is always trying to maintain a pressure, and this is one of the philosophies of modern medicine. And kind of it is. If you sit your body on an iceberg, you're going to get instant elevations in heart rate. You're going to get vasodilation to all the extremities. It's going to do everything it can to heat up your body. If you're on the iceberg for a long enough time, the blood vessels to the extremities are going to constrict to maintain the core temperature so much that the toes are going to freeze, fingers are going to freeze, they're going to turn black with frostbite and fall off to maintain that core. Now, those are all intelligent responses. So that's the difference. We are trying to maintain different levels to maintain our blood pH, pressure, and everything, but it's not going to be different. It's not going to be the same on everyone based on the environmental stimulus. However, in crazy world, which is where we are, we think everyone needs to have that. So if you're, stressed, can't sleep, poor diet, by gosh, we're going to give you a chemical to give you a blood pressure of somebody that doesn't have those stressors. You know what I mean? This is insane. Let's go over the germ theory. Okay, let's blow this one out. Theobald Smith, brilliant guy. He was one of the developers of the diphtheria toxoid for vaccine. Now, he felt that the more times that you inject a vaccine in someone, that you can have a negative response to the foreign proteins shot in the skin. And in fact, it was called the Theobald Smith phenomenon, that every time you inject, the more injections, the more negative responses you had. And this is back, late 1800s, early 1900s, that he came up with this. I don't think he'd be a real fan of every child before 5 years old getting 5 diphtheria, pertussis, and tetanus shots. He might want to rethink that. So here's the germ theory formula. Now you got the virulence of pathogen times the number of pathogens times the opening size. Everything is divided by the host resistance. And so because we can give drugs to kill the pathogens, we can close up the opening size, but what works on the resistance of host? Anything you change on the bottom, by gosh, you radically alter the equation. So this means that the severity of disease is not as important as like the bug. Like, does anyone in here have multi-antibiotic resistant staph on their skin? MRSA. Say yes, we all do. We all do. Anyone in here pass by anybody in the casino that might be taking an antibiotic? No kidding. Then you pass by and you got some of their bacteria, so you actually have antibiotic-resistant bacteria on your skin. Why isn't it bugging you? Because you have a resistance of your host. Your immune system is everything. So when we look at this, it's not, the germ theory is true, but in crazy world, we're looking at the germ and not looking at the immune system response to the environment. Okay, that our body is always intelligent. So does that mean that cancer is all systemic? Is breast cancer in the entire body? Yes or yes? All cancers are systemic. They present locally, but they're all systemic. It's a local tumor, local this, local that, but you have to treat the whole body. So how do we define health? It's kind of like, how do you find wealth? Is it a bunch of, money piled up in a safe? Or is it the freedom to do what you want, to help others or enjoy life? How do you define health? The World Health Organization, and this goes back to 1948, defines health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. That makes sense. Then you go through on the different ideas. Now, this is off of a paper from Stanford talking about the philosophy of medicine. And they're still discussing at what is health, what is disease. And when you go way down here, there's not an underlying general concept of disease within the biomedical sciences that's coherent enough to be analyzed, and that different concepts of the disease might be useful with different contexts. So when you go to the doctor and they diagnose you with a disease, are you aware that it's still in discussion? That we're not actually sure what you got, why you got. The test may be appropriate, but no one's answering these questions. Isn't that weird? I know. It's wild. Here's Lancet. Again, this is going back 1968. They're talking about the germ theory. And this is, what you're going to find out in hospitals and the standard medical and even some chiropractors that forgot their philosophy, that the body is self-healing and self-regulating. The germ theory has become dogma because it neglects the many other factors that play a part in deciding whether the host, germ, environment complex is to lead to infection. It is dogma. And it's like, what do they say when you get a vaccine or when you don't? I don't believe in it. No, this is science. It's not a religion. If it's a dogmatic approach to a scientific theory, there's a difference there. That doesn't make sense. We should always make decisions regarding health based on data, not on belief systems. I mean, you got to have a philosophy. Is your body self-healing and self-regulating? Is there an innate inborn intelligence? I mean, this germ theory, Theobald Smith back in the early 1900s also said, hey, look, it's a resistance of host. Here's another one, 2004. Do biomedical models of illness make for good healthcare system? No. So what's the biomedical model? If you're utilizing medical care as health. Health, it's the absence of disease. Yes, your blood test is great. I know you feel bad, but don't worry, we'll give you drugs for that. I have this one thing, Lunesta, that will fix sleep. Great commercial. It has a butterfly flying through. Have you seen those? I love the commercials. I really do. Disease. The patient is a victim of circumstance with little or no responsibility for the cause of illness. It runs in my family. My uncle had this. My father's going to have it. Okay, so you know what I do? Doctors, when a patient comes in there and says, yeah, I got fibromyalgia. It runs in my family. Oh, okay, can you name any relatives that don't have it? Well, yeah, but my second cousin on my sister's side has it. Okay, no, it doesn't run in your family. There's a difference between gene and gene expression. The biomedical model of illness, which has dominated healthcare for the past century, cannot explain forms of illnesses. And this is what the biomedical model is if you're utilizing medical care. And I say that because I don't utilize medical care for health. I use it for trauma. If I am run over by a car with my legs broken, that's where you take me. To rehab, you bring me to the chiropractor. Okay, that's an illness. And this is the biomedical model. Remember, if you utilize this system, illness has a single underlying cause. The disease or pathology is always the single cause. Removal or attenuation of the disease will result in a return to health. And you can equate this with almost every disease pattern or medical visit that you've had. Evidence exists that all three of these assumptions are wrong. Absolutely they are. Yeah, because we're not talking about the resistance of hosts. The patient is not a victim. I love this. An expanded model of illness is proposed, which emphasizes that disease is only one factor contributing to illness and illness behavior. So now we got the responsibility on us. Are our finances part of our responsibility? Absolutely. Are relationships part of our responsibility? Yeah. So if we become responsible for our health, our wealth, our relationships, everything, man, I couldn't pick a better person than you. You know, you're the one that's best to be in charge of your life. I know there's a few parents in here that wish you were in charge of your kid's life. Can I get an amen? Yeah. You know, if I was in charge of your life, I would run it so much different. You know? Yeah, it doesn't work that way. Okay, and now we're looking at this, a change for biomedical, a new model. And we need to look at the social, the psychological, behavioral dimensions of illness. We have to. So look at this basic philosophy. I mean, is the body self-healing and self-regulating? Is there an innate inborn intelligence in the body? Does disease exist? Or is it an adaptive physiologic response? So if you're walking around because you have high cholesterol and you say, well, my 91-year-old grandma also has high cholesterol and she's 91 and healthy, good. She requires it. That's 70% of her brain. You make every hormone out of cholesterol. It's vital. So these are not diseases. From now on, everyone in this room will understand that high blood pressure is not a disease. It's an adaptive physiologic response. Yes? Okay, that constipation, diarrhea, that these are signs of deficiency or toxicity. Skin reactions. Do you know that psoriasis, eczema, all of these people have low stomach acid. It's not a skin disease, it's a representation of the body trying to detox or to survive in a toxic, deficient environment. I got an idea, let's put a steroid cream on it. No, that's crazy. Okay, so here's one. Are parasites good or bad? But I don't know, both. I like that. So, because we have this psychosis that we're not designed to thrive in this environment. And we are. Now, here's one, and this is Annals of Neurology, an association between parasitic infection and immune system responses in multiple sclerosis. It turns out that when you have a parasite, you have a large immune system reaction. It's called eosinophilia. Okay, and these are a big production of white cells. And this is how your body's going to respond to that. Now, did you know when they did the measles shot in Africa and the vaccine, and they're checking, sure enough, measles incident declined. However, death rates skyrocketed from malaria. And they thought, wait a second, is the measles virus actually stimulating the immune system in order to protect for our environment that we've had to adapt to because of malaria? No, don't do that study. Not in today's dogmatic world. We can't do that study. So eosinophilia. So you go to the doctor. Yes, you have parasites. Take this drug. You have eosinophilia? No problem. We can control it with corticosteroids. Really? Why is it there? What's the response? Is this a disease or is it an adaptation? I don't know. Let's go back to the Annals of Neurology. Holy moly. Parasite-infected multiple sclerosis patients showed a significantly lower number of exacerbations, minimal variations in disability scores, as well as even changes on the MRI when compared to uninfected MS patients. Wow. It turns out that even though, we know 90% of all multiple sclerosis patients are remitting and relapsing, so we know it can't just be a demyelinating disease, that it's reversible, that it's an adaptive physiologic response. How's that? Wouldn't that be cool? So that means that if somebody comes with MS, you don't give them steroids to decrease the symptoms. You say, look, your body's self-healing and self-regulating. Nerves can regenerate. We can detox your body, get your body healthy, because this is an adaptive response. MS doesn't actually exist. In our culture, we have a thing called polypharmacy. The average person over 65 takes 7 drugs a day. Okay? And that's insane. 28 different medications annually. So doctors, when you get a patient in who's taken multiple pharmaceutical products, raise your hand if you've heard of this. Yeah, like everybody. Okay? So what do? You can't say stop them. So what you do, you walk them through and you say, look, nobody knows what 2 drugs do together. What I want you to do is separate them by at least a half hour, okay, and drink a full glass of water in between. That way it'll detox your body. And then as we get your body healthy, we have to develop a dialogue with the guy that gave you the drugs. And I'm not going to call them doctors, the guy that gave you the drugs, because he was unaware that your body is adapting to a toxic deficient environment. They didn't do x-rays. They didn't do a heart rate variability analysis. They didn't do the standard test to answer the question, why? They're just drugging the symptoms for an adaptive response. Now, here's the bummer. If you take the drugs you're taking and you give it to a healthy person, what happens? They get... I know, I make them say sick even though I didn't say it. Isn't that cool? Okay, they get sick. You're right. And while we're getting you healthy, if you're still taking the same drugs, you're going to stay. I know, isn't that cool? It's called Socratean teaching. It works every time. And of course, you're not going to set up a dialogue with the guy that gave the drugs, but you're going to educate the patient. And then the guy that gave the drugs is going to start to understand that maybe the body is self-healing and self-regulating. Yeah, we're going to change this world. So basic medical care is controlling symptoms with chemicals. Most doctors aren't going to talk about lifestyle changes or that your body is intelligent and the diseases don't really exist, that it's an adaptive physiologic response. So in real science, and this isn't, I don't believe in flu shots or whatever, it's what are the symptoms? Why are they there? Ask those questions because your body is intelligent. So what is health? It's a full expression of life. If you drop a brick on a foot of somebody who has full-blown diabetes, they're not going to feel it. So is pain really a negative response or an intelligent response? The body is an innate inborn intelligence. Just keep going on this. So does that mean fibromyalgia is an intelligent response? Yes. Does that mean Parkinson's is an intelligent response? Yes. Why? Because movement triggers dopamine. So we know that there's a problem with the brain function. So when we look at this, toxic reactions to drugs, medications cause mental decline. Dementia costs 4 times in this country what cancer costs. 4 times. Do we see advertisements with chartreuse ribbons that say, by gosh, let's protect the minds of our population? See, that's a slam on the pink ribbon. Okay, did you get that? Real subtle. Okay, so no one's talking about the loss of the mind. Okay, but these drugs, antihistamines, narcotics, sedatives, when we look at these, okay, and this is fun because when you're talking Alzheimer's, they know that there's some type of inflammation. And here's a key. Everyone sitting down? No, this is going to knock you off your feet. Inflammation is how the body heals. Inflammation is an inflammatory process of regeneration of tissue. It's not a pathologic response. When you're talking about systemic inflammation, that means the entire body is damaged from a toxic, deficient environment, and that's when inflammation can be a problem. Now, you got two ways to handle inflammation. Inflammation is an oxidative process, or it's a process of changing cells. So if I scratch myself here, what's that going to turn? Red. Yeah, because what I'm doing, I'm breaking cells, histamines are going to be released, then my brain goes down there, increases blood flow, and within a week or so, it's going to heal completely. I'll have brand new tissue. Amazing. I don't need to say, hey, wait, don't talk to me. I gotta heal this. No, the body does it on its own. It's really cool. Okay, so now here, and the way you handle inflammation, because what inflammation is literally breaking down a tissue, free radicals are created. So if you take an anti-inflammatory like apple, banana, or fish oil, okay, that's taking care of those free radicals, so it's efficient. It works well. Psychotic is to take a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory. This is a chemical that alters that healing process. Okay, now they're talking about non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, Motrin, Advil, Aleve, and here's a list of them, more. And they're looking at people with dementia. And they're saying, yeah, we're seeing inflammation here. So in my mind, I'm thinking a toxic, deficient environment that the brain's damaged. Okay, and they're saying, why don't we give a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory? Well, they did, and the patient got worse. This study doesn't disprove the theory that inflammation is a factor in Alzheimer's. Negative studies like this that fail to prove the hypothesis leave thousands of questions to be answered. No, the question I have is, where was this guy in physiology class? He's actually a doctor that doesn't understand that inflammation is the healing process of the body? I love this. Have you ever heard of Excedrin PM or Tylenol PM or all of these? All of these antihistamines are linked to Alzheimer's. I've got 9 pharmacists as patients. They see me for sinus issues because they're scared to death of this stuff. Do you pass it out, doctor? Yeah. It's one of the most popular drugs. Simply put, we have confirmed that anticholinergics, something as seemingly as benign as a medication for inability to get a good night's sleep or for motion sickness, can cause or worsen cognitive impairment, involves gradual memory loss, has benign. Okay, I have this chemical I'm going to give to you. It's going to knock you out. No, you're going to have your REM sleep totally interrupted. You're going to be waking up tired. And in fact, on the side of the jar, it says fatigue and everything is the effect of this medication that I'm giving you to weaken your immune system and to weaken your body's response to the environment. And he calls it benign? Wow. Man. So when we look at this, how many type 2 diabetics? Have you heard of type 2 diabetes? Well, it's not diabetes. It's a reaction to a toxic environment. So what do you do? If you take metformin or glucophage, yes, it does lower blood glucose. By God, we got a better shot on that blood test. However, if you lower blood glucose by 9%, you increase death 19% because insulin levels remain the same. And how long does it take to get over type 2 diabetes? About a month. About a month. Look up Simply Raw on YouTube. Takes about a month of a plant-based diet. So what do we recommend to patients who are diagnosed with type 2 diabetes? Yeah, you're going to go on a plant-based diet. We're going to get you to sleep right. We're going to check your nervous system. You're going to be fine. Okay, do you check your blood sugar? No, I just take that metformin. Okay, start checking it because within a week your blood sugar is going to start to be normal. However, if you lower blood glucose 14%, you have a 43% increase in death. Death is really hard to recover from. I know, 2 people, but one of them had help, okay? Okay, so when we look at this, statins, the number 1 drug, I mean, this is ka-ching, baby. $10 billion, the first drug to cross that $10 billion production mark. Amazing. Oh, wait a second. Stimulates hardening of the arteries and heart failure. That's a bummer. What was it prescribed for? Well, thus the epidemic of heart failure and atherosclerosis that plagues the modern world may paradoxically be aggravated by the pervasive use of statin drugs. We propose that the current statin treatment guidelines be critically reevaluated. How about we go on the philosophy thing that the body is intelligent, self-healing, and self-regulating, and cholesterol is elevated because of the need of systemic inflammation? Or what's the purpose of cholesterol? What's the function of it? Why is it 70% of the brain? Why does your body make every hormone out of it? I got an idea. Let's give you a chemical to lower it because I'm smarter than your body. Do you see this? I mean, I'm reading these things it's just like, my God, this guy, brilliant MD. Okay, he's talking about, in this chart over here, the American Heart Association, 1.5 grams per day of salt. Now, they're not talking about Celtic sea salt, Himalayan salt, salt with minerals, salt that's actually beneficial. They're just talking about the industrial byproduct, the white stuff. But it turns out if you have 4 times that much, you have less heart disease risk. Now, they're not going to change their guidelines. Of course not. Why should you let facts change your opinion? I know, they're still against coconut oil. Okay, now I love this. Hopefully this lesson will prove to be impactful because that certainly has not been the case to date. As in cholesterol, blood pressure, prostate-specific antigen, mammography, and a very long list of poorly conceived, non-anchored guidelines. Were you aware that mammography is not anchored in science? That it actually increases cancer risk? I mean, when we look at this, and then people go on this psychosis of genetics. Okay, these are common misunderstandings of genetics. Every aspect of biology of an organism can be predicted from its genes. No. But remember, these are what people are saying, and it's not true. Single genes code for specific anatomical behavior features. Genes are a blueprint for an organism's forms and behavior, and genes are uninterrupted sections of DNA that code for only a single protein. Now, so what they started is what genes really are is heredity. Okay, and you pass on this aspect because your ancestors survived to get to this point. 50% of your DNA is viral. And so that's a communication with our environment so that we can adapt. If you have light-colored eyes, you probably grew up in an area with less light, okay, probably in the northern hemisphere. If you have darker skin, you probably grew up where there's a lot more sun. And you pass these traits on. And what's weird is there's a difference between genetic and genetic expression. Now, they started the Human Genome Project, planned in 1984, started in 1990, finished in 2003. Now, they thought, since the human body produces about 100,000 proteins, there must be 100,000 genes. Because this is really, talk about ka-ching, this makes Lipitor look like nothing, the statin drugs. I mean, if we can identify a gene that does everything, there's a gambling gene. Have you heard that? Don't worry, there's a drug to stop that gambling gene, you know? Uh-oh, that'll kind of mess up Vegas. Okay, but when you look at this, we have about the same number of genes. So what we thought isn't actually true. Now, this is huge because if you can control gene expression, that means you control everything. You can produce proteins that cause cancer. You can produce proteins that reverse cancer. You're the one that's going to produce it. So what is this? Is there a control above the genes? Now, they came up with this, and this was brilliant. Okay, in 2000. So remember, 1990 to 2003, in 2000, they decided to work with these certain mice because no one had ever heard of epigenetics at that time, or control above the genes. So they got these fat, sick mice, and guaranteed to get cancer, and they're just horrible. And what they found is that in one generation, by feeding the parents healthy food, and I'm talking crazy stuff like onions, garlic, beets, radical food. Seriously, okay? They're feeding them normal food, okay? And it turns out that their offspring were healthy. And it's like, wait a second. They didn't display their parents' susceptibility to cancer or diabetes, and they lived to an old age. So now they're saying, wait a second, there's a control above the gene. So what kind of controls are above it? Now there's an epigenetic project. Yeah, let's see how that one's going to go. Okay, 150 billion genome sequence reads so far. That means that if you slept good, you're going to produce certain genes. If you didn't sleep good, you're going to produce certain genes. If I'm saying stuff that's causing you anxiety and stress because you're one of those people taking the 12 different prescriptions and you're thinking, my God, which one should I stop? Okay, you're producing certain genes, your stress hormones now. So let's look at this. And epigenetics is everything. It's a control above the genes. You're not a slave to your gene. You are a slave to your genetic expression. And if you can change the genetic expression, you change your environment. And I'm talking the ecosystem that's your body. You can actually change this by changing gene expression. When you start learning this, you think, my God, all the diseases in my family, 80% of what kills the population, of the planet, is all based on genetic expression or environmental adaptation. My God, and this is in our power? Okay, so what controls genes? What today is altering our human genome sequencing to develop certain diseases? Well, have you ever heard of cholesterol-lowering drugs, antidepressants, blood pressure, tamoxifen, oh, that's a brilliant one, methotrexate, anti-inflammatories, this means Motrin, Advil, Aleve, Tylenol. Oh, and if you have any of this stuff in your cupboard, do yourself a favor, throw it away. Really. Okay, or understanding that these can actually change gene expression. What do you get? Heart disease, cancer, nerve and mental disease, diabetes, leukemia, bipolar, schizophrenia. That's what you get if you take those drugs. Why? Because you're expressing genes, because you're increasing the toxicity and deficiency in your environment. Say it with me. Wow! This is so cool! I'm not a slave to my drugs anymore. My body is intelligent. So this is cool. Now this goes to chiropractors. See, chiropractors aren't muscle and bone doctors. We don't do that stuff. We're nerve doctors. We alter the autonomic nervous system. This is radical. Now when you look at this, many of the insults that lead to critical illness, such as sepsis, trauma, surgery, either cause or perhaps consequences of profound alterations of the autonomic nervous system. Regardless of the etiology, it doesn't matter the cause of the disease. It's at the core, autonomic dysfunction is the core mechanism. Now, I have a challenge with this because it's not a dysfunction of the autonomics. It's an adaptation. It's an adaptive response. Okay. Now, when we look at this, what is this autonomic nervous system? You all have it. We were talking about human dissection. If we had a cadaver up here, I could do a laminectomy, I could expose it, I could show you. But these are actual structures. And basic, one of the things I would ask, what's the connection between the hand and the eye? Now, here I'm teaching over human body. I got all these scared doctors around me, okay, because they don't want me to pick them. So I go in there and I say, okay, watch this guy's eyes. And I go 1, 2, 3, and I squeeze right here. What do you think happened to the eyes? Dilated, yeah. So I said, what just happened? We stimulated the sympathetics. So if the sympathetics is firing off, this is fight or flight. Do you want blood going to digestion or blood going to arms and legs? Arms and legs. So it leaves digestion, so blood supply to the digestive tract is shut down. Okay, heart rate elevates. Immune system is decreased because you're trying to run away from danger. And then at nighttime, or when you're in a safe environment and you're not being chased by the tiger, then the parasympathetic nervous system kicks in, and then that regenerates tissue. So we need a balance of this. Now, here's the challenge. In our environment, physical, chemical, and emotional stress all stimulate the sympathetics. So what's going to happen if you're chronically stimulated in this fight or flight? Are you going to have digestion problems? Yeah, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, all this. If you're chemically stimulated, okay, with medications or toxic food, or, the chemicals that are in our air or water, okay, that's going to be a stressor. But all three of these stressors, your body responds the exact same way. If you're emotionally upset, because I just walked through CVS and I see this 9-year-old in a stroller with a helmet on, and I go, my God, that's never been on our species before, and now it's super common. Okay, and we think nothing of it now, but do you remember any 9-year-olds in your classroom if you're 50 years old and older? How many kids, if you're over 50, in your class, in your school had asthma? Now we're talking 1 in 4 have an inhaler. So this is huge. So what we really got to do is deal with the toxic, deficient environment. Deal with those physical, chemical, and emotional stressors. When we're talking about glyphosates, this means every bread that isn't organic in America, we can't sell in Europe because it's sprayed with glyphosates. I mean, it's brilliant. You spray this stuff on, and sure enough, the wheat plant dies. It increases productivity, but it blows holes in your intestinal tract and depletes your body of minerals. So without minerals, you can't utilize vitamins, so you die bad. we've pretty much sacrificed an entire generation of children. The longer we go on, the more damage is going to accumulate. Now, there's a guy that can speak. Heart disease, is it a problem? What if I said this species, every 40 seconds, somebody is getting heart disease, stroke, cardiovascular disease? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. This is bigger than all forms of cancer combined. So I go in. What's a normal blood pressure, doctor? What do they say? 120/80. How many have heard 120/80 is normal blood pressure? Yep, sorry, you're off, okay? That was Joint National Committee in 1997. They came up with 120/80. But then they revised it. Okay, yes, in 2004. That's Joint National Committee 7. Did you know that there's a committee that gets together and decides what your physiology should be? Self-healing and regulating, except when we have drugs to alter it. So in 2004, 120/80 was actually pre-hypertensive. They wanted 115/75. Yes. They did that for about 10 years, and they found out a lot of people were stroking out because when you're slowing the heart down, are you helping oxygen to the tissue or slowing it down? Okay, so that's less oxygen to the brain and the tissue cell. Does that sound like a healthy environment? No. So thank goodness in 2014 we have new, relaxed, more science-based guidelines. It's still ridiculous. If your blood's not healthy, it's got to be higher than this. If your blood is healthy, it's going to be lower. If you're in a resting state, you're right here. If you're talking before a group, it's going to be higher. Yep. Really? So when we look at this, what drugs do they give you? How about calcium channel blockers? In conclusion, then this is to lower blood pressure. The results suggest that patients with hypertension treated with calcium channel blockers have increased incidence of heart failure. Now, Klingons in the room don't have to worry about it. You got two hearts, no big deal. Humans in the room really got to be panicked about this because heart failure is a big deal. We only have one. What, no Star Trek? Okay, good. I'm hoping there, you know. Okay, what about another drug to lower blood pressure? Okay, here's diuretics. It's a water pill. And what I tell the patients, no, water doesn't, it comes in a glass form. It's not in pill form. This is a toxic substance that increases kidney function. You lose blood, you lose fluid, so you're going to lose minerals, you're going to lose amino acids. It's going to cause cardiac arrhythmias and 4,200 more deaths and 37,000 more hospitalizations per year. But by gosh, your blood pressure looks so much better. I know you're self-regulating and self-healing, except when I decide that you're not. I know. Nasty when you're presented with the reality that we're exposed to. Okay, these are the top selling drugs. Cholesterol, Prilosec. Oh, this is a good one. We don't have time to go into it, but this one increases, you're talking esophageal cancers, it increases heart problems, and it's because your body can't digest toxic food. The top selling drugs. Epidemic of heart failure and atherosclerosis that plagues the modern world is aggravated by the pervasive use of these drugs. We need to change it. Cancer. Uh-oh. I got a minute 46. Okay. Yeah. Can I have like 5? Okay, good. Okay, so cancer is a metabolic disease. No. Please, play back at half speed. Okay, so cancer is not a tumor. Cancer is not genetic. Cancer is all systemic, and it's a disease of metabolism. You reverse cancer not by cutting out the tumor. You reverse cancer by realizing that it's an expression of an intelligent expression of a toxic deficient environment. So how do you correct cancer? Change the metabolism. These are the causes of cancer. And it's not age, it's how you age. There's a difference between biologic and chronologic. We were discussing it yesterday. I mean, my license says I'm almost 58, but my brain says I'm around 31, 32, which is weird because my oldest son's 31. Viral infections, hypoxia. Hypoxia, what do you think blood pressure drugs do? They decrease oxygen to the tissue. Oh my gosh, okay? This is what comes into my office every day. We're looking at ulcerative colitis. Like if you've ever heard of leaky gut, this is leaky gut. This is leaky gut. This is abnormal bowel gas. This is small intestinal bacteria overgrowth. 8, 9-year-old kids with chronic bowel disorders. Where is this coming from? We know that vaccines are a contributing factor. We know that the toxic food is. But when we're losing 1 and 2 of these kids in just a few more years to autism, is there a gut-brain connection? Yes. This is where serotonin's produced. So when you see this in a kid, guess what you're also going to get? Depression, anxiety, hyperactivity, attention deficit disorder. Forget not being able to sit down in class because they got to poop 4 or 5 times a day. You know, this is insane. This is a species level, an extinction level event. This is currently 3 times the amount of vaccines that any country is giving to their population on the planet. 3 times the amount. 3 times. Now you might say, is this dogma or is this based in science? Well, let's look at the human and experimental toxicology. Studies have not been conducted to determine the safety or efficacy of administering multiple vaccine doses in a variety of combinations as recommended by the CDC guidelines. Really, doctor? They really need 36 shots before they're 5? They really need 69 doses of 16 different vaccines? Or they can't get into school? Is there any studies that show they're safe and effective? There's actually a bill being passed now by, and it's called HR 327. It's to say no more studies are to be done on vaccines, that they're all safe and effective. So I call up the congressman's office and I talk to the guy and I said, well, you know, we got 2 choices here. Either he's completely unaware of CDC data of the vaccine adverse event reporting system, or of the 200 articles that say that it's a contributing or causal factor in autistic or autoimmune disorders. So we've got, he's completely ignorant of this, or he's being paid off by the pharmaceutical industry. So right now, our best hope is that he's ignorant. Okay, my wife says, John, that's not a good way to win friends and influence people. And I said, well, how would I word that other than that? I mean, it's like he's a congressman. He's passing a bill. He should have read this stuff. Hepatitis B vaccine. This is insane. Alters genetic expression. This is why 1 in 2 of our children have a chronic illness or disease that will never recover. And do this with your friends. If they have a child that's fully vaccinated, and you can say natural birth or at home. Oh no, it was in the hospital, but it was natural. Really, were you given Pitocin and an epidural? Oh yeah. That ain't natural. You're talking a 60% increase in neurologic damage from vaccines if you were given Pitocin, the cow hormone that initiates contraction that damages the kid. Now, which one of the 4 does your kid have? Think of 3 B's and an S. Behavioral, bowel, breathing, or skin. Which one do they have? In our era, my era, and this is back when we had stone tablets. I was born in 1960. My brother. Okay, when you look at that, there wasn't allergies. This is a recent phenomenon. Asthma, it was like almost non-existent. Now it's ridiculous. Why? Because we're triggering an inflammatory response every time we inject someone. So we're seeing massive rise in inflammatory diseases. I mean, all you got to do is just look at the aluminum adjuvants in there. What do the aluminum adjuvants in there do? It alters DNA, alters gene expression. Aluminum, and we're talking, again, we hope that the paper presents, or the present paper will provide framework for a much needed and long overdue assessment of this highly contentious medical issue. Yeah, it is. For sure, guaranteed, without a doubt, you shoot people with a vaccine, you're going to see a decrease in incident of disease. For sure, without a doubt, guaranteed, you're going to see an increase in inflammatory diseases. Now, is it better to have chicken pox or multiple sclerosis? Measles or cancer? Do you know what I mean? What's our population? We used to have chicken pox parties. We used to have measles parties. You know? My God, look at the Brady Bunch measles. Journal of Toxicology, again, you know, Lancet. Now, I was vaccinated with the polio shot, and they waited till I was 5. My mom didn't know, but it turns out that the vaccine that I was exposed to is involved, it had a SV40 virus in, some of them still do. Lung cancer, brain cancer, bone cancer, lymphatic cancer. That's when my age group, high lymphoma cancers, high brain cancers. When we look at this, I mean, just look at the movie Vaxxed, okay? Realize, okay, that we're at a crux. We've got this allopathetic model. I mean, the symptom-oriented model. Allopathic, that was the Freudian slip. Okay, so we have an idea that the body is self-healing and regulating, but we can alter it with chemicals. Do we have a challenge with that? Yeah, we got a change in the belief systems. So we're right there. We're at the discovery. We're thinking, oh my God, vitalistic concepts. The body is smart. These diseases don't really exist. So this is the enlightenment. This is where we're going to change. So all of these diseases don't exist. They're adaptive physiologic response. When we talk about these things, and we put this at the end of every talk, you got to have a healthy nervous system. Why? Because that's what regulates your entire physiology. You got to have regular exercise. Park far away. Walk in a half hour a day. Proper nutrition. If man makes it, you don't eat it. Sufficient rest. What happens when somebody comes up to me and says a chronic illness or disease? Yeah, we got to fix the sleep patterns. How did you know they weren't sleeping good? Gee, rough guess. It's going to be one of these 5, because if you take care of every one of these, you're going to achieve health. You're going to reverse disease. Yes or yes? Prayer and meditation. Is it important to have a relationship with a power that's greater than you? To have an appreciation last night before dinner, praying before. Why? Because what we're eating is going to become us. The nervous system, you got to get this checked. I mean, this is the heart rate variability that we use. We have the sympathetic, the parasympathetic on one side, and this should be balanced. Find a doctor that does this. Because if you're in that fight or flight state, then you're supposed to have digestion problems. You're supposed to have poor sleep patterns. If you're low functioning parasympathetic, you're a heart attack waiting to happen. Heart attacks do not come from clogged arteries. Heart attacks come from an altered nervous system. We've known this since the 70s. We've known it from the 70s. Autopsy shows that, you're only talking 20% of people with heart attacks have clogged arteries. Know that this, regardless of the etiology, the nervous system is the key. And because you live your life through the nervous system, is your body in a stressed environment or healthy environment? If it's stressed, you're going to live stressed and your tissue will break down. I don't have time to go into the genetic regulation. I was talking too slow. This is everything, okay? So realize, own this. If you can, your body is self-healing and self-regulating. You are more energy than matter. Thoughts can actually change your physiology. And one of the things that I use, I'll say, if I held up a picture of a puppy and you thought, oh man, that thing's going to chew my shoes and poop on the carpet, your brain would secrete adrenaline and cortisol and your body would be in a sympathetic dominant state, and just your thoughts alone are going to change your physiology. If I showed you a picture of a puppy and you thought, oh my God, it's my best friend, I'm going to cuddle, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it, your brain would secrete dopamine and serotonin and your body would respond on a physiologic basis of that. Okay, your immune system would be increased. I'm showing you a picture, but based on your thought patterns, you're producing chemicals that your body's going to respond to on a cellular basis. Does that make sense? Good. So hopefully I've positively affected your thought process, because I know I'm way over time. So thank you very much.